Welcome back to The Heat. We're discussing the economic Putin's visit to Beijing. Let's get back to our panel. Yunsun here in DC. There's a relationship between Vladimir Putin and President Xi Jinping. How does that impact things? And the perception around the world is that they're basically cooperating on many different levels. Is that true?
Well, that is true, especially from the strategic perspective. We know that bilateral trade has been decreasing recently, but on the strategic aspect, while China is facing some problems in the neighborhood in East Asia. There's a dispute in East China Sea, there's disputes in South China Sea, and China more or less feels isolated in the neighborhood, with the U.S. being interfering, using the Chinese term, in the West Pacific or East Asia. And we also know that in the case of Russia, because of what happened in Ukraine, Russia's relationship with the West has been in a pretty bad shape recently. So there are common grounds, there are common necessities, like the fellow panelists just mentioned, to bring China and Russia together, to align their positions, to make each other less isolated in the international stage, and to jointly fight for their own cause.
And a bulwark a little bit against Washington dominance?
There is certainly a strong aspiration from the statements that we saw from both presidents during this visit and their previous meetings. There is a very strong intention on both countries' parts to fend both countries against the Washington dominance.
I want to also go now to Bangkok and Pepe Escobar. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Tashkent also focused on security. It was continued talks in Beijing as well. Afghanistan, a real sort of meeting point for both Russia and China. Where is the cooperation there and what's at stake?
Well, you remember a few years ago that Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, she proposed an American New Silk Road with the focus on, guess where, Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a minor player, of course, an important minor player, but it's not a focus for a new Silk Road. What the Shanghai Cooperation Organization plans to do, I would say in the medium to long term, is to provide some sort of peaceful agreement in Afghanistan, which is something that the Americans would never be able to. And this means bringing the Taliban to the table somewhat, and some sort of division of influence in areas in Afghanistan, where the Taliban are going to have, for instance, their cut if you ever built the TAPI pipeline, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. So if can you believe that this has been going on for 20 years now? The whole Afghan story, 20 years ago, first Clinton administration, was about building a pipeline and giving a cut to the Taliban. And the Taliban, they were asking for $50 million at the time. They were wined and dined in Houston, and nothing happened. And then came 9/11, and we all know what happened. So now, the Shanghai Cooperation, I would say that the master plan from the Russian and the Chinese side is, okay, we already have commercial interests inside Afghanistan. It's up to us to try to come up with a solution. Pakistan and India are going to be on board because they are now members, official members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Next year, maybe we're going to have Iran enthroned as a member as well. So we have all the major players surrounding Afghanistan coming to a sort of agreement to solve the Afghan problem once and for all.
Tao, I want to bring you in from Beijing. Obviously, big discussions at the SCO, but also between Vladimir Putin and President Xi, is also terrorism. This is one area that both countries really can cooperate on, correct?
Yes, I think this is very important for those countries to work together, not only just for its own domestic threat, but also for their broader geopolitical cooperations. I think many of the panelists already mentioned areas such as Central Asia, Afghanistan, and also don't forget Pakistan. China and Pakistan is actually also building an economic corridor, which is going to be one of the key programs of the One Belt One Road initiative. And then all of those areas, the cooperation, the investment and return, and all the safety or security of those will all be threatened by the terrorists. So it's very important for Russia and China, two of the most important regional power, to work together to solve this issue, or at least to contribute to the more peaceful circumstances of those projects. So it's very critical for China and Russia and also all the other member states of the Shanghai Cooperation organizations to find a solution to reduce the threat of the terrorists to their own countries and also to the regions that they have the common interest.
Victoria, I want to get back to the economic plans, because one of the interesting facts is now that China has importing more oil from Russia than it is from Saudi Arabia. This has been going on for some months now and is growing. Is that, to you, an inflection point in terms of where China is getting its oil supplies and the security it can get from that rather than importing from the Middle East and through the South China Sea?
Well, obviously, China is diversifying as much as possible, and Russia at this moment is probably one of the safest and most reliable suppliers that could be for China, because as you rightly mentioned, the South China Sea and United States involvement in this area does put in danger their uninterrupted supply or possibility of uninterrupted supply of oil to China. Same, Middle East is by far not a calm region. And so I guess while China will continue a diversification policy with importing oil from other states, but Russia now is really the most reliable. And to add a bit on the political side, which also bears economy, just see that it was also Putin pronounced that he totally supports China's bid for the G20 on all the issues. And one of the issues that China is paying attention is economic support, financial support for terrorism, and the rules for FATF to fight against money laundering. So to look for to cut sources from which terrorism could be financed. And I think it's a very important issue where the two countries should, and they are cooperating, and where they are taking a common stance within the G20.
There's another area of, we could talk for hours on this, but military cooperation between Moscow and Beijing is very interesting at the moment. War games, defense, in terms of missile defense, how big is it, and where's it going forward?
Well, like we just mentioned, there are plenty of reasons for China and Russia to come together to strengthen their strategic alignment and strengthen their military cooperation on issues and areas that they deem as necessary. And we know that both Russia and China oppose to the deployment of THAAD system on the Korean Peninsula, which is something that the U.S. and South Korean government have been discussing, and it looks like it will proceed. So both China and Russia see that as a strategic threat, and of course that becomes another very strong reason.
Because it could threaten their nuclear deterrence.
Yes, it could threaten, well, China says it could threaten China's national security, and because of the geographic proximity, it could also threaten Russia's Far East. So geographically speaking, that there is a threat, and China and Russia are trying to work together to reduce that threat.
Just a last word from Beijing. Tao, military exercises, joint development, rockets, lots of areas of cooperation between Beijing and Moscow.
I think for the military cooperation between these two countries, it's very important that they feel the safety. They can ensure that they will be much less threatened by the countries that are in these regions, especially when they have dispute with, for example, in China, in the dispute with U.S. and also neighboring countries, and for Russia, probably now less about that from the EU. So these military cooperations between these two are actually a signal to those countries that there is a strong cooperation and backup to each other between China and Russia. But at the end, I think in both China and Russia, no one is really wants to go to that step. It's more about seeking to have a peaceful cooperation, peaceful solutions for the disputes that we had here.
Wang Tao in Beijing, thank you very much. Pepe Escobar in Bangkok, thanks so much. Victoria Panova in Hong Kong, really appreciate you being here. And Janssen in DC. That's all we have time for.